Good morning, seventh graders. Today and tomorrow, you will be working on our final assessment for our cells unit. That means that you will be showing me everything that you've learned during this unit. And our unit question is, why did the two loaves of bread turn out so differently? So, for the final assessment, you're going to answer this question. Everything below this dotted line gives you details on how you're going to do that. So, first, this tells you your timeline. You will have time during class on Thursday and Friday, plus the weekend if you need it, to complete your final assessment. We are beginning a new unit on Monday, and therefore you will have no class time starting Monday to work on this assignment. You get to show how, or rather, you get to choose how you show what you know. So you could write an essay, you could do a model that's got captions, you could do a video recording and show images that you have created. You could do a big drawing like a one pager, a comic, whatever it is that you want to do to demonstrate your knowledge. But you need to include the requirements listed below. So there are four main requirements. Number one, you need to include as many ideas from the explanation checklist below that you can. So here's the explanation checklist, and we're going to go over that in just a minute. So you need to include everything from this list that you are able to include. Use your resources. Use your digital notebook, including any activity. So if we did a reading, a video, listened to a podcast, did a lab investigation, anything at all that you used to learn information about cells, yeast, and our bread, absolutely use it. It's not a requirement that you memorize this information. And if you haven't learned it yet, great. This gives you an opportunity to continue your learning so that you can demonstrate mastery on our final assessment. I want you to include a model to explain the things and or processes we cannot see. And your model may be drawn on paper, or you can do a model on a computer. I always prefer a paper model. I think it's just so much easier to show what I know, and my energy can be put into creating something that shows my understanding instead of giving my energy to figuring out how to use a digital tool. But it's up to you, whatever's best. There is no difference in the amount of points that you get when depending on the style that you give your information. So in other words, I don't care how you show me what you know. I'm not going to change the amount of points for how you show me. The only thing that will give you points is your demonstration of mastery. And that is all explained down here in this explanation checklist. So there are five main things that you're going to be assessed on in this final assessment. Your knowledge of cells, cell parts, yeast and food, and then applying this knowledge to our content or our unit question about the bread. So make sure that you read through each of these to really understand what you need to do. Each of these bullet points correspond to the rubric down below. So notice there are four categories. There's distinguished, proficient, approaching standard, novice, and no evidence. So each category has a description for how you get the score in each criteria. So for example, on my assessment, if I am talking about cells, I will get 2.6 points, or Miss Lamott will give me this score right here, if I can state that cells exist. So if somewhere on my assessment, either it's in my voice recording or something, I say something about how cells exist, I would get this amount of points. If I describe what a cell is and where cells are found, I would get an approaching standard. If I can explain why cells are considered the smallest unit of life, that would give me proficient. And if I can explain the purpose of cells and include an explanation of how and why cells differ between organisms, so for example, single-celled or multiple-celled organisms, and then within organisms. So for example, how humans have different types of cells, then I would get this rating. My recommendation is that you aim for proficient. So you want to try to get at least to the third bullet down. You want to at least try to get there. And in fact, with cells, it would be the second bullet. That is a B plus. Okay, so a proficient rating would equal a B plus. Distinguished is an A. Approaching is a C. And novice is a D. So you will get a different rating for each criteria. And again, the criteria here match our explanation checklist. So we have cells, cells, cell parts, evidence that yeast is living, yeast. Then we have yeast in food, application of knowledge, application of knowledge. Notice that some of these are worth more than others. So again, it's still where a distinguished is 100%, a proficient is a 88%, approaching is 75%, and a novice is 65%. So even though the percentages say the same, some of them are weighted more heavily. That shows you what the teacher values. So I value your ability to apply your knowledge and describe cell parts and functions and show me your systems thinking. I think that those are the most important. And so therefore, I've given them the most amount of points. These are also foundational knowledge pieces that you must have in order to really get to these pieces. So they do have points, but they're just a little bit less. You will get a score for each one of your criteria. So maybe you would get a 4 in cells and a proficient in cell parts, and maybe an approaching in yeast, and then a proficient in yeast and food, and maybe a distinguished in your application of knowledge. So that is going to equal a certain amount of points that will add up, and you will get the percentage out of 28. So in order to figure out your overall percentage that you get for the assessment, you would simply take the total number of points that you get based on your performance in the rubric, and then divide that by 28, and that will give you a percentage, and that percentage will correspond to a letter grade. If you are working on your test and you need some help, ask me. I'll come to your breakout room, or I could direct you to resources that might help support you in your understanding. If you are finished and you turn in your work, I will give you feedback. I will grade you using the rubric, and you can then use the rubric to go back and identify places where you need to show more mastery. And then you could go and do more learning and update your work and resubmit it. And then I will regrade you, and it can improve your score. So that concludes the instruction on the test as a whole. If you have any questions, obviously I'm always around. Make sure that you ask. But also, if you are confused, go back and watch the video one more time. That will allow me as the teacher to be helping you with content instead of helping you understand logistics. So good luck, scientists, and I look forward to seeing all of your learning.